All right, guys, next up is uncovering pain. Now, like we talked about in the discovery slash qualification call, so after building rapport, then you set the expectations for the meeting. And then right after that, you're going to transition into uncovering the prospect's pain. So, why pain is super important is because this is where you really get the prospect to invest in the relationship emotionally. By drawing out the pain, he's going to want to buy whatever it is that you got. And I'm going to show you exactly how you're going to do this. So, how exactly are you going to transition from setting expectations to uncovering pain? Well, you want to think about it like this. You want to use this formula called the DIQ formula. And so the DIQ formula is a specific way to ask a question by first earning the right to ask the question. A lot of times people will ask questions and it might make people feel uncomfortable. Like if you say, how much money do you make? Or how much budget do you have? Who's the boss here? You know, if you just come out right off the bat asking these really tough questions that people will typically only answer if they trust you, they're just not going to trust you at all and you're not going to sell anything. So using the DIQ formula, we're going to show you how to ask a question in a very, very specific way so that people trust you and you earn the right to ask it. Most people ask questions before establishing trust, like how much budget do you have? What recruiting software do you use? Who's in charge here, right? And so in these examples, people aren't going to tell you these things unless they really trust you, and you have to earn that trust. So using the DIQ formula, it's actually an abbreviation, and the first part with the D is data. So it's an insight, statistic, or any type of life observation that you have. Next is going to be the insight, which is an explanation or opinion on that data. And after that, you're going to ask your question, which is a question you ask another person based on the data that you have and the insight you just shared. So what does that exactly look like? Well, I'll give you an example. And let's say I'm selling a consulting services to Los Angeles restaurants in my area. So I might say, I noticed a lot of cafes in the LA area have been using Instagram to promote their businesses. And it seems like they're getting a lot of foot traffic and generating more revenue because of it. I was curious to know what your strategies around Instagram marketing were. So in this example, to DIQ, the data is noticing that a lot of restaurants in the LA area have recently been using Instagram to promote their businesses. The insight is because they're using Instagram, they're generating a lot more revenue. And by saying that, I'm subconsciously making this person feel like because everyone else is doing it, they're being left out. And so after I earn the right to ask the question by pointing out that data and giving my insight, you're almost like being a consultant in this case. You're asking the question. So it's like, I was curious to know what your strategies around Instagram marketing were. If I just came out right off the bat and said, what are your Instagram marketing strategies? In people's head, they're going to think, why are you asking me that? Like, who are you to ask me? But when you're giving them this context and you're framing the question in this way, you're earning the right to ask a question. And so by using this formula, that's how you're going to transition from setting expectations into getting into pain by asking this question in this way. Okay, so we got the DIQ formula down. So what exactly is pain? So pain is the gap between what people have and what they want. And so a lot of times this gap isn't very obvious. Some people have very obvious pains and they're hurting and they know they're not in a good situation and they know what the better situation looks like. But a lot of times they don't know and they need a salesperson to guide them there. So the strongest pain is the gap buyers are feeling in the present moment. To kind of clarify what I mean by that is it's not about pain that they experienced in the past. It's not about pain that they're going to experience in the future. You want to identify the pain that they are feeling now. So for example, if they're a restaurant in LA and all these other restaurants are making money off of Instagram, getting foot traffic in, and they're not, then the pain right there in the present moment is that they're losing out on customers by not using Instagram. So you're basically saying everyone's doing Instagram, everyone's making money, and you're over here on this side. And so by widening that gap, you're making them hurt. So here's how the pain formula is going to work. This is how you're going to get people to feel an emotional pain. And by making them feel pain, it's going to get them to buy emotionally rather than logically. And at the end, they're going to justify whatever they bought logically. So here's how it's going to go down. The first step when you want to bring out someone's pain is you want to first find someone who doesn't necessarily need what you have. People who do have pain, that's going to be really easy. They already know it and it's an easy sale. But we're talking about people who don't even know that they If you can convince someone who doesn't even know that they have the pain, that's when you know you're truly good at sales. You find someone who doesn't need what you have first, right? Number two, you make them hurt as much as possible. What I mean by that is, you say all these things like everyone's doing this and you're not, everyone's making money and you're not, and you just keep jabbing at them. And you're not necessarily attacking them, you're just saying things and framing things in ways where they feel like they're missing out, FOMO. And what happens is you hurt them so much that you make them sick, right? So a lot of hurts equals a sick. So you keep jabbing at them and you make them sick, and they're like, oh man, like maybe I should do something about this. And so after that, you put them in a critical condition. So by making them sick, you hurt them a lot, then you make them sick, and you just keep making them sick. You stack these pain points on top of each other, until they're like, oh man, this really hurts. I have to do something. I have to do something to make more money, or else my business is going to die. And after they are in the critical condition, and they're in the hospital, they're hurting, you want to come swoop back in and be their savior and make them well again. So what you're actually doing is you're causing them a ton of pain. And then at the end, you're going to become their savior, and you're going to be that person that solves their pain. So why this is beautiful is because you're taking someone when you're really good at sales, you're taking someone who doesn't have any pain. They don't even need what you have, and you're making them aware of all these pains and all these opportunities that they're missing out on. You're making it hurt so bad that they want to be where everyone else is, and then you're gonna help them get there. That's what it means to sell. So to get there, we're gonna use something called the pain pyramid. So in the beginning, you're gonna talk about the surface pains, then you get into the business pains, and finally you get into their personal pain that they feel emotionally. And it's gonna go from top down. So surface pains is really easy, then business pains are medium, and the personal pains is a little bit more difficult to get into, but not that hard once you get the flow of things. So you move down the pyramid as fast as possible, because you don't want to be talking about surface level stuff all the time. You want to get into the real emotional stuff that people feel. And it basically, you want to think about it like from what to why. You want to talk about like what's going on to why it's happening. And you want to always remember that people buy emotionally and justify their decisions logically. So I'm going to show you exactly what questions to use in each of the phases of the pain pyramid, so you can take someone from the top of the pyramid all the way to the bottom and make them hurt and then become their savior. So the best way to uncover pain is to ask questions. And one thing I want to emphasize is that a lot of people, especially when they're in sales, they think, they're good at selling because they're a good talker or they're good looking or whatever it is. But in reality, the best salespeople, and this is common industry-wide, worldwide, is the people who are curious and the ones who know how to ask the best questions. So the pain pyramid questions, here's going to be the surface pain. So when you're talking about the pains, you did the transition, and they might say, my Instagram strategy, I'm not really doing that much about it. I'm posting a couple pictures. And then you could say, well, what do you mean by posting a couple pictures? What do you mean by that? Another one is, can you be a little bit more specific? What's an example of that? How long has this been a challenge? Have you tried anything to solve this? So, whenever someone brings up their pain, they're going to start talking about like, oh, we only dabbled into marketing. We started to get into Instagram marketing to promote our business, but we really haven't been, putting that much effort into it. And then you could, you do surface pain questions like, oh, well, how long have you been doing Instagram marketing? Oh, a couple of months and blah, blah, blah. Have you tried anything to improve? So surface level pains, get the conversation going, get them to start talking. After that, you're going to go into the business pains and you say, well, why do you think that didn't work? How much do you think that's costing you? Has anyone at your company tried anything else? Is your company committed to fixing this? What happens if you do nothing? And so by the business pains, you're diving a little bit deeper and you're being a little more specific on where exactly that pain is within their business. So you could go, deeper into saying like, has anyone tried? Have you tried, doing anything about it? What happens if you do nothing? Do you lose money? Do you make money? How much is this costing you? So by getting into the business pains, people review a little bit more and you're slowly peeling the onion back and they're getting into their real pains. So you're saying like, oh, well, we tried and, we tried hiring somebody, but it didn't work out. We spent money here and blah, 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 blah. So people love, the way I think of it is everybody has a story to tell, but not everyone's willing to listen to that story. So by using this framework of the pain pyramid questioning, you're able to get this story out by asking these questions. So once people start talking about their business and like how much money they're losing and all of this stuff, then you can get into their personal pains. So when it comes to personal pains, it's questions like, how does that make you feel? How does this directly affect you? Are you going to give up? How do you think I can help? This seems like a huge problem. Why haven't anyone solved this yet? And so this is where things get really interesting, because when you ask somebody, my favorite one out of all of this is, how does that make you feel? Because when you ask that, even though it's such a simple question, people love to say, oh man, it makes me mad. I'm so frustrated. I really hate this. And, the faster you can get someone to talk about their personal pain, how a situation directly affects their everyday life, that's when you know you're making progress in the sale. When you can feel the emotion in their voice and they're telling you about how much things suck, how frustrated they are, how much they hate this, how much money they're losing on that, that's when you know you are getting the real pains. A couple rule of thumbs with the pain pyramid guidelines: it typically takes 3 or more questions before getting into the personal pain. So you might have to ask couple surface level questions, a couple business questions, and then you can get into the personal ones. When you get a hint of pain, you have to know that's when you go deep. When you feel, you're gonna feel it when you talk to somebody. You just know that they're feeling frustrated about a certain situation. They're not frustrated about you, they're frustrated about their situation at work. So once you get that little nibble of pain, that's when you want to ask deeper and deeper questions and keep probing it. And of course, when you're asking these questions, you do not want to solve their pain too quickly. You want to listen as much as possible and get as much information about the buyer before you do any type of selling. Again, when you are doing a qualification call and doing a discovery call, you do not want to sell too quickly. You're basically not selling anything, actually. You're just letting the person tell you everything about their business, letting them vent to you, talk about their pain so you get a better understanding. And then at the very end, you will kind of pitch your idea and get to the presentation. But for now, we are only going to be great listeners. And so with that, the pain part is going to go on for maybe 10, 20 minutes, 30 minutes maybe. So, it really just depends on where you're at in the sales cycle and, who you're talking to. But for the most part, this is where you're going to spend the majority of your time during a qualification or discovery call. It's getting deep into people's business problems, their personal problems, and then getting a better understanding of how you're going to pitch your idea to solve for that problem.